This evening, Nick Kyrgios apologises amid a storm of criticism over his on-court sledge at Stan Wawrinka. The Australian says he wants to move on after his controversial comments about Wawrinka's girlfriend.
You know, I told him I was sorry, and obviously, you know, he was angry, so I just had to deal with it. Something I had to deal with, and hopefully we can just put it behind.
I'm Mark Douglas, and this is Grandstand. Thanks for your company. Australian tennis player Nick Kyrgios has apologised for his behaviour at the Rogers Cup tennis tournament in Montreal. Today, the 20-year-old was booed by the crowd during his third-round loss after being fined for yesterday's controversial sledge. Patrick Galloway reports.
Nick Kyrgios emerged ahead of his third-round match to a hostile reception.
Not surprisingly.
It's been tough. I wouldn't say it's been the toughest thing that's happened.
A sledge in the direction of Stan Wawrinka during the second round has offended many.
Fucking off, just banged your girlfriend. Sorry to tell you that, mate.
There's no excuse of directing your tantrums to your opponent, and especially to somebody that is not even there.
Kyrgios apologised on social media, saying the comments were unacceptable and he took full responsibility for his actions.
You know, everything's sort of put to bed now, and you know, I thought we could move on from it.
But Kyrgios' on-court behaviour doesn't appear to be settling. Today, Tennis Australia said in a statement they're working closely with Nick to provide the best possible support, understanding how important it is to help educate and influence him. That help includes asking Leighton Hewitt to accompany some young Australians on the ATP Tour.
With an idea in mind that he's someone that those guys really look up to, Nick and Thanasi, and he's someone that can really make a difference.
It's not working yet. During today's loss, Kyrgios again seemed to lack focus.
Oh, a little too nonchalant there, and he's going to pay the price.
The ATP announced it would fine him $12,500 US, and they've left open the possibility of additional fines and suspensions. Nick's brother tried to defend him on radio this morning.
You know, I guess you can expect a bit of sledging back.
I understand that, Christopher. I mean, the difference here is that he's dragged innocent parties into it. You know, he's dragged young Kokonakis into it. And more to the point, Donovan.
Sorry, yeah, we've just had to dump Christos, who said something pretty crook.
The tennis community seems to feel just as offended.
He deserved it. I think he's gonna learn the lesson in a hard way, and hopefully this won't happen to him anymore.
You know, I told him I was sorry, and obviously, you know, he was angry, so I just had to deal with it. Hopefully we can just put it behind.
The US Open starts in 2 weeks. Patrick Galloway, ABC News.
South Sydney has dented the Cowboys' minor premiership aspirations, but the Rabbitohs will lose key players to suspension as they prepare for the run home to the NRL finals. The league's tougher stance on shoulder charges is set to sideline 2 Rabbitohs stars after their 31-18 win in North Queensland. Mark Hyde reports.
The referees didn't notice Luke Keary's tackle, but it didn't escape the attention of everyone.
That's a classic shoulder charge. Have we spoken about that during the week, the shoulder charge at all?
Neither the officials or commentators mentioned Isaac Luke's tackle, but the match review committee has. The shoulder charges carry a 1-week ban, but Luke is also facing a dangerous throw charge, which will increase his suspension to 3 matches. The charges took some of the gloss off a big win for the Premiers. Luke's absence will be felt as the Rabbitohs look to maintain their place in the top 4.
Shut the gate! Walker scores!
The players know what they're capable of. It's a matter of just doing that for 80 minutes, which we produced tonight, and it's something we've got to keep reproducing.
The Cowboys are ruing a loss that could prove costly in their quest to claim their first minor premiership. Last night's shoulder charge suspensions won't improve the mood at Manly. Willie Mason was the first player cited under the new guidelines last Friday.
It's out of control for a multi-million, billion-dollar sporting industry to be told a few hours or to be emailed of a rule change a few hours before the game. It's just out of control.
Coaches rarely rush towards the media, but Brad Arthur had a message for the Eels doubters.
You know, I don't want to be laughed at here, but why can't we make the semis? There was still a chance mathematically, so that's our motivation at the moment.
The equation will stump even the smartest mathematician if the Eels lose to the Roosters tomorrow night. Mark Hydes, ABC News.
Former Sharks coach Stuart Raper joins me ahead of the weekend's NRL action. Stu, welcome once again. Firstly, let's talk about last night's performance from South Sydney in a match that had real semi-final intensity. What impressed you about South's performance?
Well, like you say, the intensity was one of the biggest things. I think both sides played with that semi-final intensity, but their forwards really laid a great foundation. It was quite physical in the middle. Both sides ran very hard, and we saw at the end of the game, Isaac Luke took control and started to get up the middle. But when South dominate in that middle third, we see those outside backs come to the fore. They've got some great outside backs, and with Greg Inglis there just starring at the back, they can score tries from anywhere. And it showed last night that if they dominate in that middle, Isaac Luke's jumping out, their outside backs are there. They're going to be a hard side to stop. And unfortunately, the Cowboys now, that's 2 losses in a row. And I don't think they played that bad last night, but they need to, get back on track.
Now, Souths have got a tough run home. Is that going to help them or hinder them when they get into the semi-finals? Well,
it's going to help them in a way. They need to win, but it helps in a way that they're going to play that standard of football you want to play in the semi-finals. And I think any coach wants to play top-level football going into the semis. Obviously the impending suspensions of Keary and Isaac Luke could be an issue for them.
Now let's talk about this weekend. Tonight, the Broncos and the Dragons, a match that will say a lot about the Broncos' aspirations of the minor premiership and the Dragons' top 8 hopes.
Yeah, well, that's right. The Broncos on the back of 2 losses, are in a bit of a rut. Wayne Bennett wouldn't call it that, but Andrew McCulloch is so important for them. Therefore, this game's going to be one in the middle. Most games are, and Andrew McCulloch has been a really good player for the Broncos this year. He's just been consistent for them every week. He doesn't star, he doesn't do all the big things, but just the stuff he does around that ruck, he's a real stable player and something that the Broncos will need for them tonight.
And on the other side of the coin, Mitch Rain for the Dragons has been really impressive this year.
Yeah, he's probably the smallest hooker in the competition, but when the Dragons have played well, invariably he's been one of the star players. He's so quick out of dummy half, he's got a good defensive technique, and he's a bit different to McCulloch in what he gives the Dragons. And, Benji Marshall looks like he's out, so they're going to need a big game from Mitch Rain.
Now, the other match that certainly says a lot about the finals is going to be Monday night, the Sharks against the Storm, and your Sharks have been very impressive of late.
They have. They're on a bit of a roll, and they're winning the tight games, and they're winning the tough games. And Michael Gordon's just been so impressive right throughout the year. He's a Mr. Fix-It. He gets in the back. He's really consistent in the way he plays. Cleans up there. He can score tries. He supports. He does a lot of good things. And I like the way that they rotate between him and Valentine Holmes. Gives Valentine Holmes a bit of freedom. But Michael Gordon's such an experienced campaigner. Surprisingly, they're letting him go next year, but, I expect him to star again on Monday night.
And the Storm, well, they're getting a bit of a lift from Cameron Munster, who's filling in for Billy Slater.
Yeah, and it's tough for a player like that to come in and replace someone like Slater. And I think, it's a bit different. Usually a player has to fit into a team's mould in the way they play. But I think, when you've got someone as dominant as Billy Slater, that Cameron Munster, that the team has had to adapt to the way that he plays. And, he doesn't play like Billy Slater. He's a little bit different. Good support player. Really, scored 3 tries, as I said. And, he's been a little bit different, something different that the Storm needed. And they need something like that because they've been fairly inconsistent over the past 10 weeks.
Stu, a couple of huge games for the weekend. Can't wait to see how they pan out. And we'll see you again next week.
Thanks, Mark.
Australian golfer Jason Day is 2 shots from the lead after the opening round of the PGA Championship at Whistling Straits in Wisconsin. American Dustin Johnson tops the leaderboard on 6 under, while Tiger Woods and Adam Scott both made a disappointing start to the year's final major.
Second shot. With 9 top 10 finishes in majors, Jason Day believes it's only a matter of time before he wins one. The 27-year-old enjoyed an early start before the wind picked up to shoot a 4 under par 68.
I feel like we've currently got the better side of the draw right now, and fortunately for us, we got out there and got to attack the golf course.
In only his 5th major, Australian Matt Jones matched Day's score. Second at this year's US Open, American Dustin Johnson fired the round of the day, a 6 under 66.
All I'm looking for is a chance to get it done on the back 9 on Sunday.
Unheralded Swede David Lingmerth hit the top of the leaderboard with Johnson before settling for a 67. Adam Scott's round of 76 included a triple bogey and a double.
Wow.
On the greens, Tiger Woods was all at sea and finished with a 75.
I hit it great today. but I made absolutely nothing. One of the worst putting rounds I've had in a very long time.
Rory McIlroy's recovery skills helped the world #1 post a 71 in his return from injury. The Masters and US Open champion Jordan Spieth is also 5 shots off the pace. Phil Mickelson had an even par 72 and will need a touch more luck to add to his title from 2005.
It's going in. It's going. Oh.
Duncan Huntsdale, ABC News.
The Wallabies have finalised their preparations for tomorrow night's Bledisloe Cup decider at Eden Park. Australia has the upper hand after winning in Sydney last week, but it's going to be a tough ask to beat the All Blacks at home.
It's been 13 long years since George Gregan's Wallabies last won a most coveted of trophies.
The hoop is gone. The Bledisloe Cup remains on Australian soil.
But in 1979, Mark Lone's team secured the Trans-Tasman silverware for the first time in 3 decades.
We were unsure of what it was, and it had been left in New Zealand for so long.
The 12-6 victory at the Sydney Cricket Ground was also the Wallabies' first Bledisloe Cup victory in Australia since 1934.
It was a significant emotion, and particularly for David Brockhoff, our great coach, who hurdled the picket fence, grabbed the cup and started running around the field with it. He was so happy, so overjoyed to see it return to Australian soil.
36 years later, the Wallabies have another chance to bring the cup home.
I remember seeing photos of those games, the guys running around the SCG there. I wasn't actually born then, but you know, those kind of things are certainly an inspiration. You know, we've got an opportunity ahead of us now to do something as a group.
It's a test in every sense of the word. The All Blacks have won 33 consecutive matches at Eden Park.
Out of all the grounds you play at in New Zealand for the All Blacks, this is one of the great ones to play at, and you know, there are some fond memories, but I'd really love to put another one in the bank tomorrow.
And adding to the occasion, McCaw will become the most capped rugby player of all time when he plays his 142nd test.
We know it's going to be tough, it always is. We've just got to prepare well, keep improving on the last performance and as I said, go out there and play as best we can.
I think Australia will win by 1 point. The team of 1979 and David Brockhoff will send their very, very best.
It's a tough trophy to win. Jennifer Browning, ABC News.
The Derby in Perth highlights the weekend's AFL action as teams jockey for positions in the top 8. Joining me to preview some of the big matchups this weekend is former Hawthorn forward Nick Holland. Nick, welcome. Let's get to the Derby in a minute, but first tonight, the Swans desperate to gain some momentum with no Buddy Franklin against Collingwood, who are just desperate to keep their finals hopes alive.
Yeah, both sides are pretty much out of form, Mark. We've seen the Pies have a horrid winter. Had a win last week against Carlton, but that was the first win that they've had in, you know, out of the last 7 weeks. Swans also disappointing against Geelong last week, so they'll be looking to bounce back, as you said, without Buddy. Interesting stat, Mark, is the last time these two sides met was in April 2014, so they don't have a lot to go off on how they're going to play against each other. You'd expect the Swans, who have to sort of win to get back up into that top 4 and hopefully get themselves a home final. They really need the win. And Collingwood, they've only really come up against the side in Carlton last week, so their form hasn't really returned. So I expect Sydney to come home with a victory tonight, Mark.
Now, the 2 big games of the weekend, let's start with your Hawks first. Up against the Cats, they've got a great rivalry going in recent years, but no doubt you'll be favouring the Hawks, even though the Cats have returned to form.
Yeah, they certainly have. Twice down there at Geelong, they've had wins in the last 2 weeks, and they've won their last 4. So it's certainly not going to be a repeat of the round 2 performance that we saw, Mark, where the round 1 performance where we saw Hawthorn dominate, and people anointed Hawthorn as the premiers as far back as round 1, and because they won by 10 goals in that encounter. And the Hawks last week, they seemed to overcome their hiccup against Richmond. They came up against West Coast over there in Perth, and you saw the controversial handball from Roughhead that resulted in the Shearers goal, and it went through, and the Hawks got up just by 2 goals. So it was very, very controversial, but they seem to have returned to form. But never underestimate Geelong. They have great encounters with Hawthorn, and Stevie J comes back for his 250th game. He'll be really wanting to return, pay his teammates back for being suspended once again, Mark, as we see. And he can be the X factor. He always does well against the Hawks, so expect him to return and a much better game, a closer contest. But I think in the end, the Hawks are just too good and will probably get over the line by a few goals, but in a good contest.
Now, this game in Perth, the Derby, is going to go a long way to deciding the top two potentially. Fremantle got the jump on the Eagles earlier in the year. Will they do it again?
Yeah, remember that game we saw early in the year where Fremantle just came out and kicked 9 goals to the West Coast 0 in that first quarter, and it was just amazing. We thought watching that game, gee, Fremantle are going to be the side to beat, and it was probably right because they've gone on. They sit at the top of the ladder. West Coast, we thought after that day, yeah, well, they'll be probably thereabouts the finals, but just probably making up the numbers. But they've certainly come together under Adam Simpson, and they are playing fantastic football, sitting in second place. So it's probably the biggest and the most anticipated Western Derby that we've seen in a long time, Mark, because it's a top-of-the-ladder clash. The victor almost guarantees themselves a home final, and yeah, they'll just be, bigger than normal, sort of wanting to beat each other. West Coast, unfortunately, without Nick Natanui again. That affected them last week against the Hawks. And the latest news, Mark, is that Matthew Pavlich may be in doubt as well. So watch that space because he's so important to Fremantle, as is Nick Natanui to West Coast Eagles.
Bit of a shame to lose a couple of stars, but it should be a great match anyway. Nick, thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Mark.
And that's Grandstand for now. Don't forget you can also watch us on iView and the Grandstand website.